Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Okay, so you know how sometimes when you're just called to be you, those times where that you might have a way that you present, or the way that when you go to the post office you present, or like when you show up at your parents' house you present, or when you're at work you present. So I just am not doing that. The moral of the story is when you get good at being yourself, you stop having to package yourself in a certain way in order to get a certain result, right? Because usually we do that to get love. Like okay, look, let's just start at the beginning. So here you are, baby. By the way, my name's June, and I'm facilitating your process tonight. Welcome to my journey space. No, I think that, so let's just say you're a baby and you're born and you're just so innocent. You're just, this is the most innocent little thing. And, and you're not blamed for anything. It's not your fault that you know of. You know what I mean? Stuff might be going on, but you're just doing your thing. You don't care. You can suck your toes. You can turn yourself, with your imagination into anything. You're just being a baby, and your love for it. So then something happens between then and the time people get into these groups when we're starting to ask ourselves, what is that love? Like, what did it look like? And was it real? And am I loved? And am I really actually loved for who I am? But then again, how will you know? Because you're so good at the packaging, right? By now, we get really good at the presentation so that we're out in public and we go to work and we go out with our friends and we do this thing and we get the love. And then we go home and we get back like just real with ourselves, or we're just falling off to sleep where there's no room for pretense. And we're questioning, like, where's the love? Like, is it real? So, I just noticed that that was me. And so in order to kind of bridge that gap, I found that it wasn't about anything other than being able to know that who I'm showing up as is as genuine as I can be, so that when I'm feeling what I'm feeling, I can trust it. Because there's a lot of mixed messages that we get from the outside world. Do it, don't do it. I mean, it goes on and on, especially with the health industry. Coconut oil will save your life. Coconut oil will kill you. It's like, well, somebody decide and let those of us know who aren't like 100% gifted and skilled in what the fuck friggin' heck coconut oil does. So at some point we've got to kind of discern who to trust, like what language to listen to. What are the words that when they put together make sense in a way that feels true for us? Like, how are we going to measure what we're trusting other people to do if we can't measure them or the conversation that they're in with us? Like, what is the truth of it? How does it feel for you? So part of the conversation around the packaging was just so that you can understand that part of what the work is that people do when they're doing personal development work is you start looking at what is that difference? Where is the contrast between how you show up and how you feel when you're just sitting on your deck at home, drinking a cup of coffee in the morning, or, just being yourself. And, not that it doesn't still happen, but I can remember when it happened more, where when I'm about to go to a party or about to go to an event or even about to do one of these things, I start to get a little bit self-conscious, like, what am I going to wear? And, is my hair okay? And did I do enough this, or am I got enough that? And there's human character traits that we're all going to have. We're all going to lean into the am I good enough question. Is there enough? Is there enough for me, right? Do I have enough clothes? Do I have enough time? Do I have enough friends? Am I lovable enough? That enough question is a conversation that, I don't know about you guys, but it tends to drive a lot of what happens in life, There's a book by a woman named Lynn Twist called The Soul of Money. And in that book, she tells some really cute little stories about kind of like the evolution of currency from the point of the indigenous cultures in the rainforest. But in it, one of the conversations that struck me when I read it was this conversation about enough. How, for me it all goes back to, because I work a lot with transformation with people, it goes back to the time when we felt enough versus when we made a decision. Something happened in our lives and we felt not good enough, and we told ourselves something to the effect of, okay, not enough, right? And then I was paralleling that with what I was reading from Lynn Twist and the piece about how we wake up in the morning, and it's our natural characteristic, basically, in this conditioning that we have, to lean into not having enough. You know, how many times did you wake up thinking you didn't get enough sleep, right? And then you go to make the coffee, and then there's just not enough. You know, it doesn't matter anyway, because you really don't have enough time. You really need to go because you didn't have enough clothes to wear when you went to pick something up out of your closet, and not enough of them were ironed, at least not the right thing, and it's just not enough, right? So I started looking at how that framework pretty much governs a lot of conversations that I was having internally and what you might be having internally. And those internal conversations are the thing that dictates what shows up in our life. And so since we know that like creates like, right? And if we're coming from a place of not enough, what is it that we're going to continually create? Oops, not enough, right? I got just enough. That was the other thing. I would get where I could just get just enough. You know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, how are the thought forms, how are my basic beliefs around money, how are my huge basic beliefs around myself affecting the amount of enough that's enough for me? Whether it's enough love, enough care, enough ocean, you know, enough friends, enough currency. Like, who decides enough, right? I do. And so you know what I figured, what I found out the more I did this personal development work, is the thing that you can never have enough of is presence. And that's a big conversation, you know, presence. That place where it's not about stillness. You're not present just because you're still or super focused and really listening. You know, that's not present. I'm talking about that place where you're just resonating with yourself in the environment that you're in that allows for a particular kind of engagement, that allows for that engagement itself to feed the very feelings that we all are thriving to feel. Like the feelings that, by the way, as we got really good at creating a personality, we got really good at shaping, right, the presentation so we can get what we want. The feelings have to go somewhere, because like people get nervous with feelings, like when kids start growing up and there's the parents and we start feeling our feelings, you know, the old saying, kids are meant to be seen and not heard. You know, I don't know, that was the one I got. I don't know which one you got, but definitely it was, if you would just sit down and shut up, actually, that was the message, right? So what happens is that as we grow up, there's just sometimes not the right space or the right environment for us to express who we are or to express the feelings that we've had, right? You know, like, hey, Mom, I really didn't like your Uncle Henry. You know, it got really weird, but yeah, you know, like we don't know what to do with that, right? So we put these feelings somewhere, and we don't do it out of a bad conscious reason. Like, let's see, feelings suck, therefore I'll just stick them here. It's more that in order to get through the day-to-day, we have to have somewhere to put them so we can get back up and go to school the next morning, so we can get there, you know, and play jacks and play Barbies and remember, okay, everything's okay. Because day by day, as we're growing up, we're getting messages and we're creating conversations for ourselves that are helping shape who we are now. Those conversations, those messages, are the ones that when you do this work, you start to dig into and find out if they're still true for you. You know, maybe they're not. Maybe they're not even your decisions. Maybe they're decisions that you made about yourself that you made based on somebody else's input. And maybe they got it wrong. You know, maybe they didn't know. And maybe you just didn't get it. Maybe, you know, not everybody gets really great families and great parents who just love them up, you know. So maybe there's some message that you have to, or some way to rewrite what happened to you so that you can hold it in a way that gives you kind of the opening to still go in and feel lovable, to still go in and get that place where yourself is enough. You know, you start with enough. Just it's a fine line, right? A very fine line. But, you know, whether I'm working with somebody who's an addict or somebody who's having a nervous breakdown or somebody who's just a really good person and wants to get to the next level, or somebody who wants to change, whatever it is, I find that the direction to go in every single time is to help people to see themselves. The innocence that we lose over time is inevitable. based on our conditioning, based on surroundings, based on education, it's inevitable that we're going to come across limitations, that we're going to be met with resistance, that we're going to have to learn how far we can push, how far is enough. And then it's also inevitable that as you grow older and as you start to try to identify who you are and you start looking between the lines, you're going to find that maybe who you thought you were is just part of an old conversation. Maybe you just don't even know yet. And I think that's a really good place to start. You know, it's that whole thing about taking the clock back to zero, like starting from neutral, like when you go to sleep at night and you wake up the next morning and you get to start over. So this is about really starting to discern the inner conversations that you have with yourself and start to kind of find out what are the ones that have shaped you, and then dig into those and see how true they are for you now. And what is the framework of the way that you hold yourself? Is there freedom in that? You know, can you let yourself off the hook? One of the biggest culprits for depression and for people not being able to really engage is shame. Okay, and shame is something that, by the way, even though it looks like it might come from outside of you, you shouldn't have done that. I mean, the only place shame actually takes hold is inside of you. Right? It's when you say to yourself, "Oh, fuck, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I'm a bad kid." It can be the simplest thing, but if you feel bad about yourself, and then you start to tell yourself stuff, and then you start to believe it, at some point you're going to have to look to see if that's still true. Chances are it's probably not. And when you see that that's not true, then a lot of the shame that you held for the way that you were or the way that you were conditioned loses its grip. You know, we all want to do our best. We don't grow up thinking I'm going to fuck up and I'm going to go out and do some bad things to people and I'm going to not be a nice person. You know, I think we don't even know what that means. I didn't know what that meant. Okay, it was the 60s, the 70s, whatever. It was a lot different then. But when I was a young person, I wasn't having these conversations on that side of it. I was in my room having conversations with the spirit world because I could, you know. But these conversations are how we get to know ourselves. It's through my experience with you that I can see myself. So hopefully you can see yourself in me. And so what will happen throughout the night as we're working together is that you'll start to recognize a thread that's common amongst you. You want to talk, then you want to come apart, then you want to, there's a dance that's organic to the energy in the room that's actually the environment that's been created out of your own intentions while you're here. People don't make it into a room like this by accident, you know. So first, thank you. Yeah. But you can thank yourself. And whether it's the adult in you that thought, you know, this is wise, I'm going to take a risk and try something and go meet a new person I've never met and talk about some really intimate details about my history. You know, it's usually not like that. It's usually that people somehow, there's something in the conversation that resonates and that kind of calls you to kind of lean into what is that conversation? You know. So yeah, can you have a fun night? Yeah, absolutely. But it's not the object. It's not the goal. For me, the goal is always, what can you see? What is there that when you see it will change the way that you relate to your future and your experience and your past? How is it that just a simple nugget can give you exactly what you need at the right time to make a different decision, right? Or to feel safer. Yeah. Yeah. Crack. A little bit more. A little bit more. A little bit closer now. A little bit closer. It's the heart. It wants to be felt. You know, it wants to be expressed. You know. There's that book called Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, and in it there's a line that says, I wasn't put here to see how long I could stay married to one person, right? And the thing I love about that line is that you can put anything at the end of the sentence and it would be true, you know? You're not here to see if you could do this thing tonight and really touch God. You know what I mean? You're not here to see if it's not why you're here to evolve. It's a flow. And there's a reason why you're called, yes, but you're called because of the movement. You're called because there's something in you that's asking for or thirsty for what's next. How is it that when I get that, I'll be a little bit closer now, a little bit, you know. It's that, I think it's something similar that we're all looking for. There's none of us that are immune to it. It's a knowing. It's an inner knowing. An inner knowing, and whatever you want to make that to mean for you, whether a knowing of yourself, a knowing of the peace that's available, a knowing of what true connection, how it exists, how it shows up, how it's relative. You know, I think if anything, the biggest knowing is when you get the knowing of that little kid in you who's still harboring those feelings that we talked about and is either pissed off or scared. And so when you come together, that's when the real connection becomes available for you and anybody else in your outer world. Because that connection runs everything. That connection gives you your voice. That connection gives you your access to innocence. That innocence gives you your access to each other, right? And imagination, which is everything. Everything, everything, everything. Yeah. Presence is imagination, you know. Yeah. Have you ever seen an artist, like I'm sure everybody's seen some kind of artist, whatever art form it is, that when they're in it, when they're doing that art form and you're watching them, you're not questioning if they are in the right job, right? It's just like, whoa, whether it's a musician or whether it's a painter, it's just like you see somebody in their art form and you're not questioning whether they got it right, right? But that comes from the innocence. It comes from being present in the moment with that creative expression. You know, can you imagine somebody playing this amazing piece on the piano while they're thinking about what they had for breakfast? You know? Or what they should or shouldn't have said last night at the party? There's a presence that comes from your own willingness to be seen. Ta-da! You want to be seen? Let's see. You got to show up. You know, you show up anyway. When you walk in a room, you can say you show up, right? You walk in a room, you show up. But you know the difference when somebody comes in the room and when they've really come in the room, or if they're just walking in the room, right? You feel it before you see them. You can feel them. There's something in the presence that's available. There's something for you to relate to. There's something that creates the environment for connection. And then that takes us into the conversation of how connection plays out in life, and how, you know, the immediate thing when somebody starts doing their work is to look at themselves, because that's important. You got to be able to look at yourself to see how beautiful you are, so you can see the contribution that you are, so you can start to be full, right, and fulfilled. But what happens inevitably when you start to be full and fulfilled is that you understand that in order for you to be really full and fulfilled, the people around you also need to be full and fulfilled. Because there really is a we are one thing going on here that may not be like in your immediate foreground of your daily life when you wake up and think, okay, where's the toothpaste? But when you start to play a bigger role in whether it's volunteering your time or just doing something that allows you to feel touched in your heart, you understand that that homeless guy isn't very far away from your own father or whatever, or you. I just thought it was so interesting. I had a woman in one of my groups once who was always so well put together, and she'd been coming to these groups for a couple of years, and never anything was out of place, right? Everything was perfect, perfect. And when it came time for her to talk about intentions one time, she said that her biggest fear was that she was going to become a bag lady. So I thought that was funny. Like, what do you mean? Like, how could you become a bag lady? And what came out was that she had inherited several $1 million but like hundreds of millions of dollars from her grandfather. And that from the time she inherited that money, she wasn't able to live. She didn't feel comfortable going outside. She didn't feel comfortable meeting new people. She didn't feel comfortable spending any of it. She felt so like it wasn't hers, like she didn't earn it, like she didn't belong, like she couldn't really be present to it. You know, so, you know, there's a reality that is happening in front of you, that you are either big enough to receive it, or you're almost big enough, so you're just almost gonna let yourself have it. Just not quite, like you know it's there, right? So part of receiving is becoming big enough to let yourself receive big, right? It's part of the same, it's on the same grain of creating your own reality, of using your thoughts to let yourself have what you want. Dun, 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 dun. So, hi everybody. Yeah. Okay. So, I don't know. Wait a minute. Let me see. Let me think if there's anything else I want to tell you guys. Do you have your intentions? Do people come? Did any of you come with a thought or a word or a sentence of something you know that you want to work on tonight, or that you'd like to be on the other side of, or you'd like to get insight about? Think about that for a second. Because this is the kind of experience that you're creating. You're going to meet the intelligence, so to speak, of the thing that you're asking for. You're going to pull it in. You're going to ask for help. You're going to ask your kind of friends in high places to help direct the traffic to get you in the right place at the right time with the right people for that answer, right? Or for that meeting, for that rendezvous, for that aha. It's about expansion. So tonight we'll have an experience that will allow for expansion. And tomorrow morning we'll talk a little bit about what happens afterwards, because there will be a contraction. And that is the normal state of affairs. So then the question isn't, how can we get as much as we can tonight so that every day can be a beautiful day? It's not going to be a beautiful day every day, guys. It's just, I don't know, maybe if you're a Zen monk and you sit on a mountain, or you're Babaji, but I didn't figure that part out yet. What I did figure out is that life is still going to suck some days, you know, and we still get overwhelmed, and we still have hopes and dreams that are still just hopes and dreams, you know. So it's, in the meantime, while all that's happening, how am I going to adjust myself to be able to wait for it to happen in a way that's still having fun and productive, making a difference, and then also holding the intention of what it's going to look like when I get there. Yeah. So intention is, it's one of those things that's, it's almost palpable. You know, it's one of those things that you'll know what it is by the result. You know, you can say what your intention is tonight, but tomorrow morning we'll know what your intention was, because we'll have seen what you got to tonight. This teacher told me that a long time ago, that the way to know somebody's intention is to always look at the result. Because, you know, you can say, but I meant to do my homework. Yeah, buddy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so how do you know? How does it show up? What does the end result look like? And if it's not always pretty, then you have to say, what is it that I'm creating that kept that from happening? You know? And I bet you in the very beginning, it comes down to that initial conversation. Am I good enough? Can I really have it? Am I big enough? Do I deserve it? Maybe little old you isn't little old you. You know? Hurrah. Yeah. So it's finding your voice. It's finding your, the place outside of the packaging. You know, so so let's just say you're a spirit with a personality. But it's a personality, guys. It's what it is. It's just a personality. And the ego kind of has a lot to do with that, which is, by the way, a good thing. Without an ego, you'd be fucked. You'd be dead, right? So make it your friend. We tend to always want to run from it, or, you know, criticize it, or negate it, or like keep it in its place. okay, yeah, there's such a thing as too much of a good thing, like, too much of an ego. We all know people like that, right? Or the narcissist or what that. No, I'm talking about the place where your personality, where you meet your personality, where you meet your ego, but not in a way of defiance, in a way of embrace. So that that tenderness that you need for that little kid to heal is available to you. So, let there be light, and let it shine in on every aspect, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because you're lovable. And it doesn't matter to me if you think you are or not. What matters is if you think you are or not. And this is where it comes down to the knowing. It's one thing to think something, it's something else to know it. So with the work that you do on yourself, let you find your own answer that you can trust. Nobody is out here giving you advice on, telling you who you are. But we are directing traffic so that you can see for yourself who you are. And you can own it. I'm telling you, most people, you start finding out you're a rock star and shit starts going down, man. Things start changing, people start freaking out, you start going big. It gets really fun. It gets pretty interesting. So, may the force be with you. Yeah, okay? All right. Did I talk long enough yet?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we're good?
Yeah.
It's long enough?